I've got an update to tack on to the end of the previous episode, which I have just now renamed, because I had it named something else. I have just renamed Maria Theresa, because that's what it all ended up about. It was really about that previous episode, the partition of Poland, as it turns out, which I was in Poland recently, and the most interesting moment in Polish history that which was the most interesting to me, was the partition of the Poland and the wiping of Poland off the map. After which it rose like a phoenix, some 130 years later. And in the previous episode, I noted, because it's true, that from what I heard, because I listened to the news from 250 years ago, it concerned this business of Russia and Prussia and Austria all getting together to chop up Poland and divide it amongst themselves, wipe it off the map, and there you go. I heard in the news that Maria Theresa wasn't happy with the term that everyone was using at the time for what was happening to Poland, the term partition. She argued that doesn't sound legal, and she found a legal basis for, and what she did, she fished around and found a legal basis for Austria taking, stealing its share of Poland. And look, these YouTube episodes I make are half about comedy, there's a lot of people on the internet that'll give you rigorously researched knowledge. I don't do that. I make a few jokes, but I kind of satirized it all and said, Maria Theresa, she doesn't want to call the wiping of Poland off the map partitioning, because it sounds a little bit illegitimate, illegal, whatever. And then I sort of joked that Poland and Russia, were kind of ganging up on it and saying, "What are you talking about? We're partitioning it." But I was just listening to some more news from further along after the first partition, at least, and look, once the partitioning, even I think after the first partitioning had happened, before that, now I don't do geography, but as far as I know, Ukraine was part of Poland for hundreds of years. It was part of the Commonwealth of Poland and Lithuania. All right, so you had that there somewhere. You had Russia over here. Oh God, it gets confusing. And you had Austria down there. And after the first partition, or maybe even after the second partition, I'm not sure which, but Poland got wiped off the map, or it got half wiped off the map and then fully, and Austria and Russia then ended up with a common boundary. Well, you'd expect that, I suppose. After that, you would have a situation after those three mobs, Prussia, Russia, and Austria, after they had all wiped Poland off the map and then divided the joint up amongst themselves, they'd all share boundaries now, wouldn't they? They'd all be, they'd all be next to each other. Now, a big part of the bit that Russia took was Ukraine. They took that off, they took that off Poland. I think earlier than this, back in Peter the Great's time, they had already taken what they call left bank Ukraine off Poland, Lithuania, or off Ukraine itself, depending on what your politics are. I don't get into politics. And way before that, what we now call Ukraine was Kiev and Rus, but that's a long time ago. That all got smashed up by the Mongols, the Tatars, and all that. But anyway, too much information. And so come fast forward to Catherine, and she's moved in on right bank Ukraine. She's got it all now. Now, she's got all Ukraine now. Now, look, I don't know how. It depends how you view things. Was the old Muscovy one and the same thing as the old Kiev and Rus? Kiev and Rus on the side of. I don't want to get into current politics. I'm not, and I really aren't. I really am not on anybody's side. I'm from Australia, I'm not on Putin's side. I'm not on Zelensky's side. I think both are coming from, as far as I can see, from afar. Both are coming from alternative intellectual traditions regarding the area we now call Ukraine, intellectual traditions that differ, hence war. Which one's right? Well, depends who you talk to. I don't want to get into that. But the point is, look, there was a place called Kiev and Rus a long time ago. There was a place called Muscovy, a long time ago. They were kind of ethnically similar. I mean, they were ethnically okay. They were ethnically they were all Rus lands, Rus/Slavic lands, but different princes in each. But anyway, oh God, this is ending up a history lesson which I didn't intend it to be. I wanted to talk about Catherine. But Kiev and Rus got what? Kiev and Rus got wiped out basically and turned into a car park by the Tatars, and this has gone in a direction other than where I was intending it to go. But look, from what I've heard, the bloody Mongols, the Golden Horde, the Tatars, all that lot. Mongols and Tatars aren't the same people, but you'd have to get into Genghis Khan about that. Genghis Khan took over the Tatars, but they all came over as the Golden Horde, and they offered both Muscovy and Kiev and Rus, sort of two different principalities, an offer. They made an offer to those two guys, and they said to Kiev and Rus, come under us as our vassals. You can stay doing your thing. You can stay, stick to your own religion. Do everything's going to be the same. Just pay us a certain amount of money every year. This is the Mongol deal, and follow. We've got a sort of set of 10 commandments. Follow those. They're our basic laws. Look, they're secular laws. As long as you do those things, we won't bother you. And Kiev and Rus said, we'd rather fight. And the Mongols said, well, we forgot to tell you part 2 of this deal we offer. Take that first offer or die. Kiev and Rus decided to fight, and they were wiped out, and it was wiped out and became a wasteland. All right, now meanwhile, they were the major princes of the Rus lands, as you might call them. Now over in Muscovy, that's a different mob, but I think Russians like to think of the two mobs as being the same mob, which they were, which they weren't, which they were, which they weren't. Look, ethnically they were. They kind of fought each other, and they've been fighting each other ever since, one way or another, often. Oh, the two intellectual traditions. All right. So, the Mongols also went to the princes, the minor princes. The major princes were in Kiev and Rus. They went to the minor princes. I wasn't going to talk about all this, of the area now known as which was known as Muscovy back then, which Peter the Great renamed Russia at some stage, and said, we offer the same deal with you. And they said, we'll take the deal. And Mongols said, well done, that's clever. All right, so you're going to follow our rules? And they said, yeah, we will. And the Mongols, who in the end, this was Genghis Khan's thing, in the end, the game plan was peace. That's where the Mongols were headed with everything they were doing. They wanted a Pax Mongolica. And Moscow, Muscovy, kind of benefited from their wisdom, and Kiev suffered. Yeah. Okay. And that's what you had. All right. But fast forward a fair bit, and you come to the time of Catherine the Great, and that's where we are now. You come to the time where Russia ascendant by now, because this Muscovy of which I spoke became ascendant, and under Peter the Great especially, but also under Ivan the Terrible beforehand, and all that sort of thing. And they got stronger and stronger and stronger, and then Peter the Great brought into play a policy of the gathering of the Rus lands. It was a noble quest to, let's gather all these areas back that used to be Rus, and we'll gather them all up, and that'll be our, that'll be ethnically very satisfying and we'll all be a brotherhood once again like we once were. And in this, look, what you would call Muscovy never controlled Kiev and Rus as far as Kievan Rud, as far as I could see, but it did. They were brothers. So you can see where Peter the Great's coming from. I get it. And also there's something else about Kiev and Rus and what you would call the Ukraine, or what you would call Ukraine too. It's got wealth. It's got black dirt. You can grow wheat down there. Everyone's always wanted that wheat. Back in ancient Greek times, they wanted that wheat. In the time of Herodotus, I think he wrote about it, we need to trade up there because it's a bountiful land. And that bountiful, the fact that it's so bountiful, it's a bit problematic because if you're desirable, people will fight over you. And Hitler, that's why he invaded the Ukraine. That's why he went to Russia in winter. He wanted that black dirt. He was hungry. That's Natalie. My sister, she's a train driver. She's so cool. And so you get this situation where Peter the Great and then Catherine the Great have got this policy in their heads of gathering up the Rus lands, regathering the Rus lands. And now, as it turns out, Peter the Great grabbed a whole lot of other lands that weren't Rus ever. But you got to sort of got to let you don't worry about hypocrisy in history. But anyway, so you get to Catherine the Great, who came after Peter the Great, and she's busy partitioning Poland. Now, Poland has had Ukraine for a very long time, because Moscow rose up in large part because they got a nice little encouragement from the Mongols. They did well out of the Mongols, really. They can say, and they suffered at the hands of the Tatars too. But they, in the scheme of things, Moscow did well, and Kievan Rud was a wasteland after this. And Poland ended up with, the Commonwealth of Poland and Lithuania ended up with Kiev and Rus, Ukraine, and all that. And that was part of the Commonwealth of Poland and Lithuania for a very long time. But then, as I said before, Russia, I'm just hearing the news. This is not my knowledge, I'm just hearing the news. Russia kind of ended up grabbing a bit of what you'd call Ukraine back or Kiev and Rus back, which ended up by now is starting to get called Ukraine for certain reasons, and they've got Russia have now got left bank Ukraine, and Poland are still hanging on to right bank Ukraine. Now left bank Ukraine is to the east, and right bank Ukraine is to the west, which is the opposite of the way I would like to think of it. You'd almost think that it'd be the other way around. When you look at a map, I would say anything on the east would be to the right, and anything to the west would be to the left. But it's the other way around, because this might have been before maps, for all I know. So imagine you're going upstream. I think. Imagine you're coming from the north down, from Antarctica, and what's on the left? That's left bank Ukraine, and what's on the right? It's a little bit like Upper Egypt is to the south. And the way we think these days, that anything to the north is up, and anything to the south is down. But in Egypt, Upper Egypt, is down to the south, because that's up higher. That's where the Nile's coming down from. They didn't have maps. Oh no, they didn't have our maps. They had their own maps. They didn't have north and south and east and west like we've got it, because we're smarter. And anyway, so you've got this situation at some stage where Prussia and Russia and Austria are carving up Poland. And in the previous episode, I joked that Maria Theresa of Austria, she was looking for legitimacy. She didn't want it got about. She didn't want, history telling lies. She didn't want history telling the truth that she was stealing bits of Poland. So she found she said, we are liberating it. We had it before. And now we're just getting it back, And I joked that, Catherine and Frederick would have been sitting there laughing at her, oh, come on, we're all just stealing it, aren't we? Now, look, let's put that joke of mine aside, because I was just listening to the news, and Catherine, this is after the partitions have happened. This is after Poland has been wiped off the map. This is after Poland has been partitioned. Like Maria Theresa is calling the bit of Poland she's chopped off as her gathering that area back again for her land. Not her land, but for Austria-Hungary. Because she's hooked up with Hungary now, and Hungary had a bit of that land. I think it's up to the north of the Carpathian Basin. I'm not good on geography, okay? Maybe in the hills. Okay. But it turns out Catherine is no idiot. And she wants her bit of Poland, which she has chomped off, a large part of which is now Ukraine, which Russia would say was never yours. Poland, it's always ours. Look, it depends who you talk to. Whether that's true or not. Here comes Natalie again. She switched trains. But Catherine, she's not unlike. She's singing from the same song sheet as Maria. Look, everyone wants legitimacy in the end, don't we? Like even we Australians here in Australia, we want, if we're going to possess this land where I am with trains in it and all that, possession is a funny thing. You need the ideal type of possession to have is physical possession. I've heard of this before. Legal possession and moral possession. You need those three. It's like a stool with 3 legs on it. You need all 3 legs. Okay, so maybe the Jews, Israelites of ancient times, going, desiring Canaan as their homeland. Or what did they? They weren't physically there. They were calling that the Promised Land. So what they did, they gave themselves legal possession first, and said, God has promised that land to us. All right, there's your. Now legally, that joint is owned by them. Notwithstanding the fact that there are indigenous Canaanites or someone there, they say it actually legally belongs to us, doesn't belong to them, even though they've probably been there for 10,000 years, probably since the Ice Age for all we know. but they've got legal possession, and they start pining for it and say, oh, we own that, and there's someone else there. They're trespassers, but they haven't got physical possession. Now, God has given them moral possession too, which is interesting. They've got 2 legs of the stool, but if they sit on that stool, it's going to fall over. Look, long story short, they ended up, because they was so, they felt so good about their legal possession and their moral possession, they ended up with physical possession. Great stuff. All right. And that was that. We Australians are the same, We kind of went the other way around maybe a little bit. We got physical possession first. And I think, we kind of got legal possession. Look, we got physical possession of just a little bit, Port Jackson. And then we spread out and, we ended up giving ourselves legal possession of Australia, but you're still going to fall over a little bit unless you've got moral possession. So we got moral possession of Australia as soon as we started farming the land, and as soon as we started getting buried in this land, and you end up with a bit of moral possession too, I think. And what happens is, I think, and as soon as you start working the land, so we had farmers, we had sheep, and we like up in the Mallee here in Victoria, worked very, very hard. We cleared the land of Mallee root. We actually cleared forests and everything, and it's backbreaking work. And the more hard work you put into a place, you start to get moral possession. You hear people say, the pioneers worked very hard and made this country what it was. Now, I happen to know a farmer up near Landsfield, got an old mate, and his ancestors, because he's got a farm that he inherited from these times, and he said, actually, my ancestors were maniacs with axes. But they worked very hard, and that made them, he's trying to plant trees again. But the point is, he morally owns his land because his ancestors worked very hard. How's that sound? Now, Maria Theresa wanted, she had physical possession now, and a legal possession as well, because they all signed the document. And Russia had legal possession of Ukraine now. Maria Theresa had legal possession of that area in bloody north, up in the mountains, north of the Carpathian Basin, whatever, forget what it's called. And Prussia had moved in on its bit too, over in the west. And but yeah, so what you get is this situation where Catherine is sitting there and saying, actually, I didn't steal my bit either. It was always ours. And that's what you can do. And she said, it's all part of, Poland stole it off us. And all these upstart Cossacks and everything that live in Ukraine now, who are trying to declare independence all the time and all that sort of stuff, and having revolts, and they're revolting, and all that sort of stuff. Look, they're all wrong. What in the grand scheme of things, Kiev and Rusk and Muscovy, Belarus too. We all belong together, and don't get into the nitpicking and all that sort of stuff. We're all we're on a noble quest to regather the Rus lands, and that's what Catherine was thinking, And the Cossacks said, no, we're a country, because the Cossacks were a whole other mob of outsiders and things, and ne'er-do-wells and everything, who ended up kind of a nation of themselves in Ukraine. That's weird, because nations can form. You don't have to go back 10,000 years and find, a cave with bones of your ancestors in and say, oh, we were here since caveman times. No one knows that stuff anyway. But anyway, what happened was, Catherine, she gathered Ukraine up unto herself, as part of the business of wiping Poland off the map. And she did a Maria Theresa. She wanted legitimacy too, because she was not an idiot. Of course you want legitimacy, just like we did. We like our legitimacy in Australia. Took the land off the Aborigines, but we worked very hard doing it. And the Jews, Israel's there, so I'm happy to go with that. So Catherine, actually, she wasn't joking around with Maria Theresa, saying, who's Miss Pious now, trying to get legitimacy. Catherine also wanted legitimacy, is what I heard on the news on the way back from Dandenong just now, where I was, and previous to that I was in Sorrento and had a very nice time down there too. And what happened was Catherine also said, and listen, no, we're just getting what was ours back, legitimacy, And if you're Putin, you would agree with that, and if you're Zelensky, you wouldn't. It's up to you. I'm not going to get into that. And what she did is I think she issued a coin. No, I heard it. She issued a coin and a map, and it had the Ukraine and all that, all the way down to the Black Sea as being part of Russia, as a Muscovy, and on that map she wrote, "What was torn away from us, I have restored." And it's, she would have. It's a noble quest, and I don't think she's entirely wrong in imagining this regathering of the Rus lands as a bigger picture thing, much bigger than Muscovy or Kiev and Rus. I get it, but I also get the complaints of the Cossacks at the time saying, "Hey, these Russians are invading our land." A little bit like Zelensky is saying, "These Russians are invading our nation." I get that too. But Catherine the Great, she was no idiot. And Maria Theresa wasn't either. I'm sure if I listened to the news about Frederick II, he would be able to justify and legitimize his chomping off of his bit of Poland as well. The wars continue.